Right after her mother-in-law left her house, Emma realized she'd forgotten her phone on the sofa in front of the TV. The car was already far down the road, so Emma decided she would just drive over and return it that evening. But before she could even stand up, the phone started ringing, its screen lighting up with the smiling photo of her husband, the husband who had been dead for a year. She stared at the screen and froze. For a second, her heart almost stopped beating. Before we dive into what really happened, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe so this channel can keep bringing you more stories like this one. Now, let me take you back to that day, when she was just a quiet young widow named Emma, trying to hold herself together in a house still full of her husband Daniel's memories. Earlier that afternoon, Emma had walked her mother-in-law, Evelyn, to the front porch. Evelyn's smile had been too sweet, her voice uncharacteristically gentle, but her eyes never stopped scanning the living room, Daniel's old study, the hallway upstairs, as if she were checking that everything was still exactly where she wanted it. Emma, wrapped in her long gray hijab and loose dress, had simply nodded and whispered polite answers, trying to hide how tense she felt. When Evelyn finally slipped into the back seat of her black sedan, driven as always by her quiet chauffeur, Mr. Harris, Emma watched the dark tinted windows slide up and felt a strange relief as the car vanished at the bend in the road. Inside, the house seemed to exhale with her. She locked the front door, turned toward the living room to clear away the untouched cups of tea, and stopped. On the sofa pillow lay a sleek black phone that definitely wasn't hers, Evelyn's phone. Emma hurried back to the door and yanked it open, but the street was already empty. Calling Mr. Harris was impossible. She didn't have his number. With a sigh, she set the phone on the coffee table. She'd drop it off at Evelyn's mansion across town after the evening prayers. The last thing she wanted was to keep anything of Evelyn's under her roof longer than necessary. As she reached for the teacups, the phone vibrated, then rang loudly. Emma jumped. On the screen, framed in bright pixels, was Daniel's face, smiling in his favorite blue shirt, the photo Emma had taken on a beach trip a year before the crash. For a moment, she couldn't even breathe. Why on earth was Evelyn using Daniel's picture as a contact photo? The call stopped before she could react. Maybe, Emma told herself, it was just an old contact she'd saved as a memory. She smoothed her hijab, trying to chase away the chill creeping down her neck, and sank onto the sofa to steady herself. Barely a minute passed before the phone buzzed again, this time with a message, not a call. The sender's name on the screen made her blood run cold. Daniel. Politeness, boundaries, all the rules she'd been raised with dissolved under a tidal wave of grief and dread. A year earlier, in a hospital corridor, Evelyn had once shown Emma the pattern lock for this phone in case of emergencies. Hands trembling, Emma traced the simple pattern she remembered. To her shock, the screen unlocked. She opened the message thread and read the newest text. I've received the hush money. The secret about Daniel's accident is safe. Remember the transfer next month. Emma's stomach dropped. For 12 months, she had believed what the police report said, that Daniel's car had simply lost its brakes on a downhill road and slammed into a barrier. An awful tragedy, but still, just a tragedy. Now that one casual sentence shattered everything. Anger flared through the numbness. Emma scrolled up. The chat with Daniel went back months. There were regular messages about installments, contracts, and keeping quiet. This wasn't nostalgia. It was business. She backed out and checked the call log. Dozens of calls, incoming and outgoing, to that same number. Evelyn had been talking to whoever hid behind Daniel's name almost every week. In the gallery, Emma flicked through the photos until something odd caught her eye. A screenshot from a banking app. She zoomed in. It showed a transfer of $50,000 to an account under the name Talia Morales, with the note, Coastal Project Consulting. Daniel's company hadn't been involved in any coastal project. Emma snapped a picture of the screenshot with her own phone and copied both the numbers saved as Daniel and Talia's account details into her contacts. Just as she finished, Evelyn's phone began to ring again. The name on the screen was the same. Daniel. Emma hesitated only a heartbeat before answering, then immediately switched to speaker and clamped a hand over her mouth. She didn't say a word. On the other end, there was a calm, measured breath. Then a woman's voice, crisp and icy. What is it now, Evelyn? Calling again already? Worried your little secret will get out? Emma jabbed the red button, heart hammering. This was no stranger accidentally using Daniel's name. This was someone who knew about the accident, knew about hush money, and talked to Evelyn like they were in on something together. Fear turned into a cold, clear determination. Emma opened the messages to Daniel again, pretending now to be Evelyn. She typed, "The next transfer is going to be difficult. There's a surprise audit at the bank. I can't move any more money through the account right now." She paused, then added, "We have to meet. I'll bring cash. Bring all the documents you have on the coastal project. I need to check everything in person." After a moment's thought, she sent it. Her chest felt tight as she waited. The reply came almost at once. "That's unlike you. Getting scared, Evelyn?" Emma forced herself to keep typing in Evelyn's imperious tone. "Don't ask questions. This is urgent. Can you or can't you?" Another pause, then, "Fine. Where?" Emma's fingers flew. "Grand Meridian Hotel, lobby, 4 o'clock today. Don't be late." The answer was simple. "I'll be there. Make sure the money is too." Emma didn't intend to show up as herself. She needed to see this woman, to understand what she knew without revealing how much Emma had already discovered. After a quick prayer, she chose the plainest clothes she owned, a long brown dress, a matching hijab that fell nearly to her waist, oversized sunglasses, and a black medical mask. With both phones tucked safely into a crossbody bag, she called a regular taxi instead of using her own car. At 3:30 p.m., she sat in the farthest corner of the Grand Meridian lobby, a glass of tea untouched on the low table, listening to the murmur of guests and soft piano music while her heart thudded like a drum. Exactly at 4, a woman swept in through the revolving door. She wasn't at all what Emma had imagined. No shadowy blackmailer, no rough extortionist. She was young, maybe a few years older than Emma, elegant in a silk blouse and tailored trousers, hair twisted into a sleek knot, a designer handbag dangling from one manicured hand. She paused to scan the lobby, then pulled out her phone as if to call someone. Her gaze slid over the room and lingered, just for a second, on Emma. Emma ducked her head, pretending to study her own screen. Heels clicked on polished marble. The woman walked straight toward her. She stopped in front of Emma's table and let out a small, amused laugh. "The disguise is cute," she said calmly, "but it doesn't make you Evelyn." Emma's grip tightened on her bag. Slowly, she raised her head. Behind the mask and glasses, she could still feel the woman's eyes land right on hers. "You're Emma, right? Daniel's wife?" The words hit harder than any slap. Emma's cover crumbled. "Who are you?" she whispered, voice barely steady. The woman pulled out the chair opposite her and sat, legs crossed, movements unhurried. "My name is Talia," she said. "I was your husband's business partner on the coastal project he never told his mother about." Emma frowned. Daniel had always said he was managing the company alone after his father's death, while Evelyn sat on the board and enjoyed the title. Talia seemed to read her confusion. "Not at Shaw Holdings," she clarified. "We set up a separate venture. Coastal land, development rights, big potential. 50-50 partnership. Daniel didn't trust Evelyn. He knew she was siphoning money from the main company, so he built something outside her reach. Or so he thought." She sipped a coffee the waiter had just delivered, unbothered. "That transfer you saw, the 50,000, wasn't hush money for me. It was my share of the profits she tried to steal when he died." "But the message about hush money." "About the accident," Emma said, her voice catching. A shadow crossed Talia's face. "I wrote that to squeeze her," she admitted. "After Daniel's crash, Evelyn bulldozed through everything. Insurance claims, company control, all of it, like she'd rehearsed it. It smelled wrong. The brakes failed on a car he'd just had serviced, and she insisted the case was closed before the funeral flowers wilted. Daniel was meticulous about his car. He called me the night before he died and said he'd uncovered proof that Evelyn had embezzled millions. He was going to report her. The next day, he was dead. So yes, I suspected she had him killed. I didn't have proof. I only had a hunch. And her fear." Talia leaned in. "When I mentioned the accident in that message and hinted I knew more than I did, she panicked. She wired me far more than she owed on the project just to keep me quiet. That told me everything I needed to know." Emma felt sick. Her mother-in-law hadn't just been efficient. She'd been terrified. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma asked. "Because you showed up here," Talia replied. "Because if you're holding Evelyn's phone, she's already decided you're a problem. You deserve to know what you're really up against." From her bag, she produced a small silver flash drive and pushed it across the table. "I don't come empty-handed," she said. "I hacked the security cameras from the garage where Daniel's car was serviced the night before he died. Evelyn told you it was a routine check, right? Watch this, and you'll understand." Back home, Emma went straight to Daniel's old study, a room she'd avoided for months because his scent still clung to the books and the leather chair. With shaking hands, she slid the flash drive into his laptop. One folder, one video, dated the night before the crash at 11 p.m. The footage was grainy, black and white, from a camera bolted high in a corner. Daniel's black sedan sat in the middle of the garage. A mechanic hunched under the open hood. For long minutes, nothing changed. Then a side door opened, and another figure stepped into view, tall, wearing a jacket and cap pulled low. He exchanged a few words with the mechanic, gestured toward the engine, then pulled a thick envelope from his pocket and passed it over. The mechanic stuffed it into his pants and bent back over the car. Just before he turned to leave, the man in the cap lifted his head, glancing straight at the camera. Emma froze the frame and zoomed in. Under the harsh neon light, the face became clear. Not Evelyn, not some stranger, but the man who had driven her mother-in-law to her house that morning and who had bowed politely from behind the wheel for years. Mr. Harris, loyal, soft-spoken, always ready to carry bags or open doors. The man who had helped carry Daniel's coffin. Emma's stomach lurched, her knees buckled, and she sank into Daniel's chair, staring at Harris's enlarged face like it belonged to a monster she'd never seen before. The doorbell shattered the silence, a furious, insistent clanging. It rang again and again, as if someone were stabbing the button. Emma jolted up and hurried to the upstairs window. On the porch, under the dim porch light, stood Evelyn. Her perfectly painted face was drained of color, her eyes wild, her lips pressed into a hard line. Behind her, at the gate, sat the familiar black sedan. Harris's silhouette was visible behind the wheel. Panic surged through Emma. Evelyn had obviously realized her phone was missing. She'd torn apart her office and car and had only one place left to search, here. Emma shoved the flash drive deep into her dress pocket and raced downstairs. Her bag still held Evelyn's phone. There was no time to find a clever hiding place. She yanked up a sofa cushion and slid the phone into the gap between the cushions, pushing it down until it disappeared. The bell was still ringing. "Just a second," she called, forcing a sleepy tone into her voice as if she'd been napping. She took a breath, smoothed her hijab, and opened the door. "Evelyn," she said, deliberately using the formal name. "Is everything okay? Why are you back so late?" "My phone!" Evelyn snapped, brushing past her without asking permission. The sweetness was gone. This was the real Evelyn, sharp and commanding. Her eyes darted around the living room like searchlights. "I left it here. I need it. Now." She strode straight to the sofa and began yanking cushions onto the floor, peering under the coffee table, kicking at the rug. "I was just about to clean up," Emma said quietly. "Maybe you dropped it in the car." "We tore the car apart," Evelyn hissed, turning on her. "It's not there. It's here. You must have seen it." Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You didn't take it, did you?" The accusation stung, but it also sparked something stubborn inside Emma. For months she had let this woman dictate her life, controlling the company, the money, even how Emma mourned. Not tonight. "Are you accusing me of stealing your phone?" Emma asked, her voice low but steady. Evelyn blinked, clearly thrown off by the steel in her tone. Emma spread her arms slightly. "Search the house if you like," she said. "Search my room, my closet, my bag. Search me. But when you don't find anything, remember, you are a guest in your son's house, and you are speaking to his widow, not your maid." For a long, taut second, they stared at each other. Evelyn's nostrils flared. She was trapped. To lay hands on Emma would turn a private panic into open war. "Maybe I was mistaken," she muttered at last, snatching up her handbag. "Maybe I left it at the office." The flimsy excuse hung between them like smoke. Without another word, she stormed to the door, flung it open, and slammed it behind her so hard that Daniel's framed photograph on the wall rattled. Emma waited until she heard the car pull away and the street fall quiet before locking the door and sagging against it, her legs weak with relief. She had won this round, but only barely. She hurried back to the sofa, dug into the crack between the cushions, and pulled out the phone. It felt colder than before, as if it knew what it carried. Emma unlocked it again and rifled through every app she hadn't checked yet. Messages, call history, photos. She already knew the worst there. The email inbox and sent folder were suspiciously clean. Then she remembered something Daniel had once told her about corporate people. The most dangerous things are written, then never sent. She opened the drafts folder. One unsent email sat there, addressed to a contact saved only as H. Emma's breath caught. H for Harris. She opened it and read, "She's starting to ask questions. You know what to do. Make it look like a robbery." The words blurred as her vision swam. Evelyn hadn't just killed Daniel to protect herself. Now that Emma had stumbled into the truth, she was next on the list. Emma quickly snapped a photo of the draft with her own phone, then forwarded it to herself from Evelyn's. That at least would be safe if the phone vanished. Then she stuffed both phones and the flash drive into her bag. Staying in the house was suicide. Evelyn would call Harris from another number if she hadn't already. Emma slipped out the back door, crossed the dark yard, climbed the low fence into the alley, and ran, her sandals slapping the pavement as she headed for the busiest road she could find. Under the neon glow of a 24-hour convenience store, surrounded by strangers and the constant noise of traffic, Emma finally stopped to catch her breath. Her hands were still shaking as she pulled out her own phone and opened the small text file that had come with Talia's flash drive. It contained a single line, Talia's private number. Emma dialed. The call barely rang twice. "Yes?" Talia's cool voice answered. "She knows," Emma gasped. "Evelyn knows the phone is missing. She came to the house. I found an email draft to her driver. She told him to finish me and make it look like a robbery." There was a brief silence on the line. Emma braced for Talia to hang up, to decide this was too risky. "Where are you?" Talia asked instead, her voice suddenly sharper. "All business." Emma told her. "Good. Stay where you are for a minute, then flag down a regular taxi. Do not order one through an app. Those can be traced. I'll text you my address. Come straight here. Bring the phone and the flash drive. Don't talk to anyone about this. And Emma, stay in the light." The line clicked off. Moments later, a message popped up with an address in a luxury apartment complex downtown. Within half an hour, Emma was stepping into Talia's minimalist living room, walls of glass framing the city lights far below, feeling like she'd crossed into another world. "Sit," Talia said, already clearing space on her sleek dining table. She took Evelyn's phone, connected it to her laptop with a cable, and launched a program Emma didn't recognize. Lines of text and progress bars filled the screen. "I'm cloning everything," Talia explained. "If Evelyn wipes the phone or reports it stolen, we still have a complete copy." When it finished, she disconnected the device, powered it off completely, and handed it back. Now she can track it all she likes. It won't tell her anything. Then they began to sift through the copied data on the laptop. Photos, chats, banking apps. Talia navigated deeper than Emma had dared, poking into hidden folders and obscure icons. "People like Evelyn never trust anyone, not even their banks," Talia murmured as she opened a password-protected finance app hidden in a folder labeled Notes. Several guesses failed. "When was Daniel born?" she asked. Emma told her. No luck. "When did his father die?" Another date. This time the app opened. Inside was a detailed private ledger, shell companies, fake invoices, offshore transfers. Years of careful embezzlement, all laid out in Evelyn's neat digital handwriting. "Here's the motive," Emma whispered, staring at the figures. Millions siphoned from her late husband's company, covering the tracks with forged reports. Near the bottom sat a scanned document labeled Original Will, DC. With fingers that suddenly felt clumsy, Emma clicked it open. It was Daniel's real will, dated 1 month before his death, bearing his signature and the signatures of 2 witnesses. The terms were clear. If anything happened to him, the bulk of his personal assets and 70% of his shares in the company would go to Emma, not to Evelyn. The will Emma had been shown after the funeral. the one that placed most control back in Evelyn's hands, had been fake. She didn't just kill him, Emma said hoarsely. She robbed me of everything he wanted me to have. Talia's expression hardened. We now have a motive, a money trail, a forged inheritance, and an email ordering your murder, she said. On paper, it's enough. In court with Evelyn's lawyers, maybe not. Digital files can be called forgeries, hacks, misunderstandings. We need something messier, something human. A confession, Emma realized. On record. Talia nodded, preferably with her accomplice present, contradicting her lies. She picked up Evelyn's powered-off phone and turned it back on, making sure it reconnected to the network. Then she opened the messaging app and the thread with a contact saved as H. Harris. Her fingers flew. The robbery plan failed. She ran. She knows everything and might go to the police. Meet me at the old warehouse outside town. Bring the original garage recording. We burn everything tonight. Hurry. She hit send, then glanced at Emma. If I'm right, he's been keeping his own insurance file. Maybe the original CCTV. Maybe a recording of Evelyn giving orders. Guilty men always save something just in case. We want him to bring it. Emma swallowed. And Evelyn? I just did her a favor, Talia replied. People like her track everything important. The moment this phone came back online, its location pinged whatever software she uses on her laptop. All she'll see is that her phone is at the warehouse where she keeps old company junk. She'll assume Harris has it or you do. Either way, she won't be able to stop herself. Before they left, Talia placed a call to a detective she knew, a man who had quietly helped investigate corporate corruption before. She told him there would be a meeting that night between a powerful executive suspected of fraud and the driver who sabotaged a car, and that there would be evidence he should hear with his own ears. Then she and Emma drove out to the abandoned warehouse, bringing two broad-shouldered security guards in plain clothes. In the dark, they fixed tiny cameras and microphones in corners and beams, turning the crumbling building into a silent witness. The wait felt endless. Crickets chirped beyond the cracked walls. Far-off dogs barked. Finally, headlights swept across the yard. A black sedan crept up the gravel drive and stopped. Mr. Harris climbed out, clutching a slim laptop bag like a life jacket. Mrs. Evelyn, he called softly into the darkness. Ma'am? His voice trembled. There was no answer. Instead, Emma stepped into the weak light spilling from the open warehouse door. Hood of a dark jacket pulled up over her hijab. Good evening, Mr. Harris, she said, amazed at how steady she sounded. We need to talk about what you did to Daniel's car. At first, he tried to bluster, stammering that he didn't know what she meant. But when Emma described the garage footage, how he'd handed an envelope to the mechanic, how he'd looked up at the camera, his shoulders sagged. He sank to his knees on the dusty concrete, tears streaking his weathered face. I never meant for him to die, he sobbed. She said it would just scare him, teach him a lesson. She said if I didn't do it, she'd ruin me. He admitted loosening the brakes, admitted that he'd been waiting all evening for Evelyn's signal to stage a robbery gone wrong at Emma's house. From his bag, he pulled out a flash drive and held it up with shaking fingers. I recorded her, miss. I kept the original CCTV and the audio. I was afraid she'd turn on me. I'm so sorry. Tires screeched outside, and another car fishtailed into the yard. A silver luxury sedan Emma recognized immediately. The driver's door flew open. Evelyn jumped out, hair slightly disheveled, eyes blazing. She froze when she saw Emma and Talia standing under the harsh beam of a portable work light, flanked by two imposing men, with Harris crumpled on the floor. What is this? She demanded. What are you people doing? Telling the truth, Talia said calmly. At last. Harris pointed a shaking hand at Evelyn. You told me to do it, he cried. You told me to kill Daniel. You said he was going to ruin everything. Evelyn's face went ashen, then hardened into fury. She whirled on him. You liar, she shrieked. You did it for money. They're making you say this. Then she jabbed a finger at Emma. And you ungrateful little girl, after everything I did for you, you dare to set me up like this? Emma took a step forward. Everything you did for me? She said, voice low but cutting. You stole my husband's company. You forged his will. You ordered his brakes cut. You tried to have me murdered. That's not help. That's destruction. Evelyn laughed, a high, brittle sound. You have no proof, she snapped. Nothing that will stand up in court. We'll see, Talia replied. She pulled out her phone, connected it to a small speaker and tapped a file. Evelyn's own voice filled the warehouse, slightly distorted but unmistakable. I don't care how you do it, Harris. Cut the brakes, loosen the lines. I don't care. It has to look like a clean accident. That boy is going to drag my name through the mud if we let him. You handle him, and I'll make sure your old age is comfortable. Refuse, and I'll make sure you join him in the ground. When the recording ended, the silence that followed was deafening. For a heartbeat, Evelyn stood motionless, as if turned to stone. Then something inside her cracked. The polished mask, the practiced dignity, all of it fell away. Fine, she screamed, voice raw. Yes, I told him to do it. Daniel was going to ruin everything I built. He was my son, but he chose you and your sanctimonious honesty over his own mother. He wanted to drag our name into the gutter. I did what I had to do. He deserved what he got, and so do you. She lunged at Emma, hands outstretched, but the guards moved in a flash, pinning her arms behind her back as she kicked and spat like a cornered animal. Even over her shrieks, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the night, sharp, rising wails getting closer and closer. Evelyn went suddenly limp, twisting her neck to stare toward the entrance as blue and red lights flashed across the broken windows. Moments later, uniformed officers and a plainclothes detective flooded into the warehouse. Evelyn stopped struggling. The fight drained from her face as a policewoman snapped cold metal cuffs around her wrists and read her rights. Mr. Harris, still kneeling, didn't resist when another officer gently pulled his hands behind his back. I'll cooperate, he kept repeating through his tears. I'll tell you everything. Talia handed the detective a bag containing both flash drives and a hard drive copy of Evelyn's phone. Here's the paper trail, the digital trail, and the voices, she said, and every second of tonight was recorded on those cameras. The case exploded across the news. In a country that loved corporate scandals, nothing drew more attention than a wealthy socialite CEO charged with planning her own son's death to hide corruption and steal his inheritance. In court, Evelyn's lawyers argued that the recordings were manipulated, that the documents had been planted, that Harris was lying to save himself. But the evidence was relentless. The embezzlement records from her hidden finance app, the authenticated original will naming Emma as heir, the garage CCTV, the email draft ordering Emma's robbery, Harris's detailed confession, and, most damning of all, Evelyn's own recorded voice plotting a clean accident. After weeks of testimony, the judge pronounced her guilty of premeditated murder, attempted murder, large-scale fraud, and document forgery, sentencing her to life in prison. Harris received 15 years, reduced for his cooperation. The court confirmed Daniel's true will as valid. Emma became the legal owner of 70% of the company he had once dreamed of reforming. She moved quickly. The old name, Shaw Holdings, came down from the skyscraper. In its place, new steel letters gleamed in the sunlight. Carter Group, in honor of the man who had died trying to do the right thing. Profits from the next quarter were poured into Daniel Carter Homes, an affordable housing project for low-income families that Daniel had talked about on sleepless nights when it was just a dream between them. Talia got back every dollar she was owed from the coastal venture, plus interest. Their toxic alliance had done its job. With that settled, she left for a high-rise job in Singapore, where she could build wealth without ghosts haunting every boardroom. 6 months later, Emma stepped out of the elevator into her company's lobby, greeted by staff with a respectful, "Good afternoon, Ms. Carter." Her gray hijab was now paired with a sharp navy blazer and confident posture. She split her days between board meetings and meetings with community leaders, determined that Carter Group would be known not for scandal, but for integrity. In the evenings, she sometimes drove to a peaceful cemetery and walked alone between the rows until she reached a black marble headstone engraved with Daniel's name. She would kneel, brush off the dust, lay white lilies, and say softly, "It's done. They know what she did. Your company is clean. Your dream is alive." The grief was still there, but it had hardened into something steadier. Purpose. Time moved on. 3 years after that terrible night in the warehouse, the city's skyline had changed, and so had Emma. Carter Group's tower now bore not only Daniel's name, but also banners celebrating new schools, clinics, and housing projects it funded. Inside, Emma chaired a board filled with new faces, people she'd chosen for their competence, not their connections to Evelyn. she had founded the Daniel Carter Foundation, which quietly supported prison rehabilitation programs, including a woodworking workshop in a men's prison, where an older inmate named Harris spent his days teaching others what he'd learned. Emma never visited, never asked for his name on reports, but the circle closed nonetheless. Far away behind the walls of a women's prison, Evelyn lived a very different life. Gone were the diamonds and silk. She wore a faded blue uniform and tied her graying hair back with an elastic band. She spent her days staring at peeling paint and writing letters, appeals to judges, to politicians, to anyone who might listen, insisting she had been framed by an ungrateful daughter-in-law and a treacherous driver. No one answered. No one visited. For a woman who had lived to be seen and feared, being forgotten was a punishment sharper than any judge's words. Talia, in turn, watched the city lights of another country from her glass penthouse, successful and alone. Once in a while, over a glass of expensive wine, she thought of Emma with a cold kind of respect, then turned back to her spreadsheets and deals. One quiet evening, Emma came home not to a haunted house, but to a place she loved. The walls were painted in warm colors, Daniel's study had been turned into a reading room, and the back garden bloomed with roses and jasmine climbing the fences where she had once fled in fear. She carried a mug of hot ginger tea out onto the back porch and sat under the soft glow of a hanging lamp, listening to the crickets. Her phone buzzed on the table. A calendar reminder slid onto the screen. Daniel's birthday. 3 years earlier, that date would have reduced her to sobs. Tonight, a small, sad smile touched her lips. She opened the reminder, then closed it again, breathing in the night air. Daniel was gone, and nothing could change that. But the truth about his death had come to light. The woman who betrayed him would spend the rest of her life behind bars. His company, once rotting from the inside, now built homes and futures for people who had never dreamed of affording them. And Emma herself had survived a murder plot, reclaimed her voice, and stepped into a strength she never knew she had. Evelyn had stolen Daniel's life, but she had failed to steal Emma's future. Emma lifted her eyes to the stars and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, for justice, for resilience, for the chance to live. If you stayed with Emma's story all the way to this moment, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you'd found that forgotten phone on your sofa?